here. First of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. My name is Dave Kropko with Advanced Logic Industries, and joining me today from ALI are Eric Thompson, our Senior Solutions Architect, Don Davis, our VP of Network Integration, Parker Pearson, who you just heard from, our VP of Marketing, and Jeremy Razor, our Sales Manager. And what we would like to discuss with you today is a topic that has certainly been in the news and has had a pretty far-reaching impact to both small and large corporations all over the globe. Our conversation today will focus primarily on ransomware, what ransomware is, how your organization can be affected by it, steps you can take to help minimize your risk of a ransomware compromise, and things that you as a business IT professional and leader need to be thinking about for your organization. But before we get into the meat of the conversation today, let's take a quick look at some statistics that demonstrate the scope and impact that ransomware has had in just the last 18 months or so. In the year 2016, ransomware attacks grossed over $1 billion to cyber thieves, according to the latest statistics that have been released. So in just 1 year, the ransomware attacks have netted or grossed close to $1 billion. Over 50% of US companies have experienced a ransomware incident, and you can see other countries listed on the slide, but in the United States alone, over 50% of companies have reported a ransomware compromise. There probably are quite a few more that haven't reported anything. These are just the statistics that are available. And it does not matter if it's a large corporation or a small corporation. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the attack specifically. 60% of the ransomware attacks in the United States demanded over $1,000 ransom per incident. And revenue generation, while still the primary objective, what they're seeing is a shift now in that attacks are simply geared to do nothing more than destroy your data. So there's still some sort of ransom attached to most attacks. However, what the scale seems to be leaning towards more often now is that simply they're looking to destroy the data and your access to the data as well. Ransomware attacks can take as little as 15 minutes to implement. However, median time to detection is still about 3.5 hours. So you can see the difference there in that how quickly a ransomware attack can be deployed and how relatively slow it is until the detection has been noted and remediation can then begin to take place. And by that time, it is usually way too late. And the number of attacks on businesses has grown from 1 every 2 minutes to 1 every 40 seconds in 2016. So you can see a significant increase in the amount of attacks that organizations are seeing. And you can also see where the problems lie as the industry continues to try to catch up to how they can effectively protect organizations from ransomware compromises. When talking to business leaders that have been affected by ransomware attacks, the things that they most often say are the impact that they have had is first and foremost is business disruption. That's the whole point and intent of ransomware is to disrupt your business on a daily basis. Secondly, they say they've suffered reputation damage. So in some cases, businesses that have been hit by ransomware and have been either announced or been found out to have been compromised by ransomware, their business suffers a reputation damage. Obviously, one thing that's extremely concerning to businesses that they report is that they are loss of proprietary information, either on a temporary or permanent basis. Doesn't mean that what is happening is that a ransomware attack is trying to get access to your data. It's trying to prevent you from getting access to your data. So the ability that organizations have to use their proprietary information either temporarily or permanently is disabled by these ransomware attacks, which obviously ties into business disruption, and finally, financial loss. So many companies, and this is beyond just paying a ransom. So those companies, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but those companies that have decided to pay the ransom, that's not the financial loss that they're really talking about. The financial loss is in loss of business productivity. And then finally, if you think it can't happen to you, take a look at the slide that's on the screen now, and you can see some of the companies that have been compromised by ransomware attacks. just in the last year or so, and most of these companies should be somewhat familiar to you. One of the things I wanted to point out on this slide, though, is that the Bayer and Siemens organizations, their organizations weren't hit by ransomware attacks. The devices that they manufacture were. And in some cases, those devices that they manufacture were in hospitals in the United States. So not only does the ransomware attack seek to identify companies, it also is looking to identify devices. You guys may be familiar with the Internet of Things and the fact that everything is being connected. Well, ransomware can target those as points of attack. And in the case of Bayer and Siemens, that's exactly what happened. Their organizations didn't get hit, but things that they manufactured were compromised by ransomware. And based on what they do, that can be a pretty frightening proposition if you think about what those devices are and what that could impact from a hospital standpoint would be. So those are just a few quick slides and facts about ransomware's impact and scope. I'm going to turn it over now to Eric Thompson, who's going to go into a little bit more detail about what ransomware is, how it can affect your organizations, and things that you need to be thinking about to help prevent it.
Thank you, Dave. Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm Solutions Architect here at ALI. And let's take a look at how ransomware targets your organization. So ransomware attacks vulnerabilities. What exactly are we talking about? There are 4 major weaknesses that are actively targeted for attack. The most common is email. Malicious attachments, especially Word documents with malevolent macros. Usually these arrive in the form of a resume or a shipping notification. You may also see redirected links, which is a URL in an email that appears to be genuine but is not. So let's take a look at some examples of these fake links. So we're going to play a little game. It's called, is this the correct link or not? And you only have about 3 seconds to decide. And here we go. So is this the correct link? No. In this example, the number 1 has been substituted for the letter L in PayPal. Very easy to miss. So let's try again. So Amazon this time. Is this the correct URL for Amazon? No. This time the letter A was omitted. So let's try another one. Microsoft. Looks correct. But it's actually missing a period. This has nothing to do with the Microsoft website. Completely different now. Let's go on. Apple. Everybody knows Apple. Again, not correct. This time they added an S and made it plural. One last one. Google. Nope. This time there are 3 O's instead of just 2. You can see how an end user could be pretty easily deceived by these creative changes. Second major category of attack is what we call drive-by download. And there are 2 types of these, the non-interactive and the interactive type. So on the non-interactive side, you may visit a compromised website. If you have an older browser or corrupted plugins or maybe just an unpatched third-party application, the compromised website can then run an exploit kit. These are non-interactive. You just happen to be at a website that is already infected. On the second side of the download is being actively tricked while trying to download a real application, driver, or patch. Freeware sites are our favorite target for these kind of attacks. These websites can be very confusing even to a seasoned IT professional because of all the fake download ads that they place on the download page. A third major category is pirated software. This is cracked, free, but illegal versions of expensive software that often contain malware and now ransomware. Popular programs include Microsoft Office, Windows, Photoshop, SolidWorks, AutoCAD. The fourth category is actually post-infection spread. So becoming infected from an already infected machine, which is on the same network. These self-propagating viruses or ransomware use privileged accounts. So of these 4 categories, three have something in common. And the commonality is that they need human interaction to succeed. So let's look at what actually happens during an attack. So the CPU and the memory may become overloaded. Fan noise may increase to compensate for this additional heat. You may see the file extensions actively being changed, and each variant may use its own extensions such as .crypt, VVV, Zepto, Fun, Locker. Users won't be able to actually open their files because the extension isn't recognized. If a user is working on a non-encrypted file, it will be encrypted as soon as it's saved. Changing the extension back manually will have no effect. Another thing you may see is USBs being forcefully disconnected, the external hard drives or USB drives. The goal here is to either infect it or corrupt it with forceful ejections. So what is encrypted? So ransomware wants to lock away important user data and allow the system to actually continue normally. It usually targets productivity files. These are Microsoft Office, OpenOffice, Adobe PDFs, PST files, popular image formats like JPEGs and PNGs, regular text files, and database files such as SQL or Oracle or DBA MDBs. It may also target compressed zip files or R files or cert keys, PIM keys, which are pretty important to an organization. So what happens in the immediate aftermath of a successful attack? Usually you get a display of a threatening message with instructions on how to pay, and this usually includes a deadline. The actual encrypted file folders may contain a text file with instructions as well. If your antivirus didn't stop the attack, it will probably be stopped by the attack or even deleted. You may not be able to use some system utilities such as command line, PowerShell, control panel, registry editor, msconfig, control, delete. Ransomware actively tries to turn these off to keep you from stopping it. It will actually try to remove the ability to boot from safe mode on Windows machines. It may try to remove the Windows rollback points or disable VSF. Operating system updates may be blocked. The virus then attempts to spread to other computer servers or files from an infected user who has access to these on the network. Then we'll actually see a ransom. So the demanded payment is usually in the form of Bitcoin, but sometimes now they'll ask for an Amazon, an Apple, or other gift cards because they're easier to launder. So can you stop the attack? Unless you can disconnect the network or pull the power, probably not. By the time the ransom notice pops up, it's already too late. So you can try to kill the suspicious program, but the damage has probably already occurred. You can try to change the file extensions to something uninteresting like PDF to MVP, but actually hide them from the ransomware. But then again, command line, control delete, the process explorers may not work at that point. So what are the real options after a successful attack? The first option would be restore from backups. If you have pre-infection backups, you can use those to restore. 99% of companies actually do some kind of backup, but only 41% are able to fully recover with those backups. This is because of backup failures, or the newest data was lost, or the backup itself becomes infected. So what happens if you can't recover from a backup? Well, you can attempt to recover via tools. Older cryptos may have solutions, but those are probably not the one you're infected by because the AV signatures would have already detected it. So without a successful backup, your final options are pay the ransom or rebuild it. So what can we do to prevent these attacks? While browsing, avoid drive-by downloads. Many ransomwares utilize IE, Adobe Flash, or Java. It's actually recommended not to use IE anymore. Use more secure browsers like Edge, Chrome, or Firefox. Remove Adobe Flash if you can. Disable ActiveX. Use HTML5 where possible. Fewer ransomware seem to target Chrome and its vulnerabilities. You must use Internet Explorer. Try to set the security level to high. Most ransomware can only work at lower security settings. And ransomware propagates through advertisement, so blocking ads using ad blockers or layer 7 filtering may help. Email attachments. So be cautious about unsolicited attachments. Avoid clicking on untrusted links in an email or opening those attachments. And don't enable macros. You want to use some kind of spam detection and AV, IDS, IPS, or anti-phishing software. On the antivirus side, keep it updated. And remember that AV is not perfect. Centrally managed enterprise AV can update signatures faster than standalone solutions. So least OS privilege best practices. So you want to activate user access controls on Windows 7 or above. Don't stay logged in as an admin if you don't need to. Don't do web surfing or email or document editing in an admin account. Configure the access controls, including file and directory and network share permissions with least privilege in mind. You want to keep the operating system, especially security patches, up to date. You may want to implement a software restriction policy to actually block these binaries from running in temp directories or app directories or your local app directory. And you can use Windows Group Policy Editor to push these settings to all PCs. So at the hardware level, you want to create an air gap. Separate your critical computers from the internet. And use separate computers for risky activities, never servers. Web surfing, email, BitTorrent, you should not be doing these things on a server. So at the network level, you want to install a next generation firewall. And not all firewalls are created equal. Next generation firewalls include more layers of filtering, such as the Cisco ASA, which uses firepower services. You want to block proxy services, Tors, I2Ps, block access to known malicious IP addresses, and patch these operating systems and software on the network devices. Keep them up to date as well. You may consider using a centralized patch management system to keep the individual PCs up to date or the network devices. At the external network level, you might consider using a secure internet gateway. These usually redirect DNS to a secure filter system such as Cisco's Umbrella. Email security. You need email web gateway, cloud-based email security. You want to enable strong spam filtering using technologies like SPF or Sender Policy Framework, which ensures that your domain is not spoofed. You want to scan all incoming and outgoing emails to detect threats and then filter executable files from reaching end users. Awareness and training for your employees. And this is not just for end users. This is for IT as well. So why does ransomware make it through all these layers? Well, let's compare physical security to network security. We're going to play another game called Spot the Security Hole. So can you see the security hole in this defense system? It's pretty easy to spot physical security gaps. So let's try again. Yeah, not too complicated when you understand how the system works. Can you see what went wrong here? This one actually took me a second. But once you see it, I think you'll understand. Here's another one. Not such a great idea. This one is actually the Pittsburgh Penguins' internal Wi-Fi password that was displayed on ESPN during an after-game interview. Yeah, not that great. So now tell me if this config is secure. It's not just as simple as looking at an open gate. The CCIEs on the call probably have already deduced that this config is okay, but they probably want to shut down top 3 access. Sometimes you know you have a problem, but not how to fix it. If you ask to have this window replaced, you'd say that this is a correct solution, sort of. but with a poor installation. This is a visual representation of a poorly designed security solution. You want to make sure that you have someone qualified giving you advice. Maybe you have the right product, it just didn't get implemented correctly. Most organizations have solutions that have been independently chosen and stacked together over time without a coherent plan. So we'd love to help you figure out a solution to your current issues and provide support and fill any current gaps you may feel you have. With that, I'll turn it over to Don Davis, our VP of Network Integrations, to discuss ransomware's effects from a leadership perspective.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you guys giving us the time today. What I want to do is just give you a couple of thoughts for the business leaders at your organizations. The thing that Dave touched on that everyone needs to consider is your reputation. And customers are concerned with the data that they entrust in your businesses, and the impact of a ransomware attack on your reputation is, again, one of the most important factors to consider. The other thing we talked about is what's your downtime. And the things to look at here is there's the actual cost to fix the problem, there's the revenue loss, and the productivity loss. So we talk about hard cost and soft cost. It's really important in your organization to understand and have each line of business agree to what those things are. That's not something that a consultant like us can tell you what that's worth. And once you get agreement inside your business, then an IT organization understands how to make investments. But without taking an honest look at what that downtime is worth, what the cost is going to be to make the repairs, it's really hard for you to make good investments in how to prevent, and some other things we're going to talk about in a minute, how to recover. One thing you may want to consider as you understand what the cost of being down is, a real popular rider to have for your business today is information technology rider on your insurance policy. If you don't have one, get with your insurance agents and take a look at them. One thing from a ransomware perspective that it probably won't do much good on because of the deductibles, it won't help you with the ransomware. But all the other costs, it will help. So if you don't have insurance, you should look into it. The most important thing for any organization, and we've run into ransomware attacks with customers, and the biggest thing is plan. You know, what are you going to do when it happens? I can tell you that the Department of Justice and the FBI recommend don't pay the ransom. The issue that we're seeing now from a customer service standpoint, the hackers aren't getting very good at being able to provide the actual encryption key. So you may pay the ransom, but only 4 out of 5 end users that are paying the ransom are actually getting an encryption key that allow you to unlock your data. And that gets back to the point that Dave was talking about earlier. In some cases, the intent is not necessarily to get money, but to cause destruction. So again, when you're thinking about planning, when it happens, what are you going to do? You know, the recommendation is to try to recover from backup. Some large organizations may want to consider buying an incident response service. Cisco has developed a service that prepares for readiness and response for businesses. That may be something that a large organization may want to consider. But again, the thing that you want to do most often is plan. Make sure your employees understand what your policies are and that they're trained. And it's not a one-time training process. It's a continuous process. And having your plan how often employees are trained, certainly an onboarding process that goes over that policy and training for any new employees, and then on at least an annual basis, a retraining process so your employees understand how to help prevent what their responsibilities are for protecting your company's information. So again, just to wrap it up, solid policy, solid plan. Eric went through several of the areas that you need to work on from a protection standpoint, and I'm not going to regurgitate all those different vectors and how you can protect yourself, but certainly we're there to help anyone that wants to contact their account manager and have us come out and take a look either at business policy or IT policy, and then any actual protection services that you're looking for, we'd be more than happy to help. And if all else fails, we have introduced a new backup solution that most of you have probably heard about. And the reason that we developed this product is to make sure that our customers have a solid backup. And what FlexStore is just that. It's an end-to-end solution. You can have us completely manage your backup. It has an on-site backup appliance and then replication of that backup to our data center. So if anyone would be interested in looking at how their current backup situation protects them, and maybe if FlexStore would be a better solution with that, if you do get infected, knowing that you have a good on-site and off-site backup. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Parker, and we'll open it up for Q&A.